Hey everyone, this is Alisa Dixon, and this is Astrology with Alisa, Real Talk with My Astro Besties. I'm here with Katie and Irina and Holly, and we are going to talk today about a void of course moon, what it is, why we care, and why it's important right now. So, a void of course moon, simply put, is basically when the moon has stopped having conversations with the other planets before it changes sign. So these conversations are called aspects, right? But I like to think of them as conversations. And what happens is once the moon has made its last conversation, it's just floating out there until it gets to the next sign and can start talking to the planets again. So some people say it's almost like the moon is asleep. And some people will say when the moon is asleep, we should be asleep. And it's not always that easy or practical. That's not really the way things work. But we have had some stretches of very long void of course moon energy. And the reason why is because there's a lot of planets that recently changed signs from the last degrees into the early degrees of new signs. And so because of this, I have noticed, I actually was looking at my astro planner. There are literally 7 or 8 days, like full days in the month of August, that were completely void of course, or for the majority of the day. I'm talking like 2 p.m. on, or from 7 a.m. until 3 p.m. So, like prime work hours, life hours, where you could be met with some frustration. A void of course moon is almost like a Mercury retrograde, same kind of vibe. So, before we get too deep into the void of course moon and how to work with the energy, what is it good for, what is it not good for, I wanted to turn it over to our resident moon expert, Miss Cancer Moon Irina, who really knows everything there is to know about the moon and loves to talk about it. So, I want her to get us in the right mindset of what we need to know about the moon and how to work with it and why it's so important to be in tune. Enough,
Awesome.
Elisa. Go ahead, Irina.
Thank you, Lisa. I love, love, love that analogy of the moon having conversations with other planets. It's a lot of fun thinking about the moon moving on to Mercury and having a little chit chat. Here's the latest gossip, going on to Jupiter, expanding on detail. Brings it into a more playful, approachable, relatable way to engage with the moon because the moon is that fastest moving light in our heavens in regards to us. And because of that, it changes zodiac signs every 2.5 days. And what people can discover when they start paying attention to the rhythm of the moon, not only like when it's a new moon or a full moon, a lot of people are already aware of that, but when it starts to be so subtle in its shifting of the zodiac signs, you can start to harness that energy. Because, like you talked about, the moon having conversations with other planets, and then when she goes void, of course, she's just hanging out. She's floating. She's chilling. I love that phrase too. If the moon's doing nothing, you should be doing nothing. Kick back, relax. But she's waiting to have that next conversation and enter that next zodiac sign. And that transition point is a pivotal moment. If we can be aware of the moon's movements, all of a sudden, because she affects us so much on a daily basis, our daily rhythms, we're no longer subject to the whims of these up and down emotional roller coasters. A lot of my students and clients consider themselves highly sensitive people, empaths, intuitives, and they're more sensitive to the moon's movements. And they may not have always been aware of that in the beginning. So when they start to track and say, okay, what's the moon doing? And it could be as simple as like looking outside and saying, oh, it's a full moon or a crescent or a quarter. I can't see anything. And noticing, how do I feel? And even doing something like the Astro dice, or I have my students pull cards, like, what am I feeling right now? Or what do I need to be aware of? Or how do I articulate this experience? It gives them a way to engage with the current energy. So, for example, as we're recording this, we have a new moon in Virgo coming up. And I don't know about you guys, but I love a good Virgo moon because I get all of my to-do lists done. I get my house organized. My family actually hides. They track the moon now because they're like, oh goodness, the moon's going into Virgo. Mom's going to be nuts. She's going to want us to clean nonstop. But the thing is that I know that and my family knows that. So when I start acting really wonky, They're expecting it. It's not, oh God, mom on her emotional roller coaster, drama llama mama. But these are things when the moon is in Scorpio, I know I'm going to feel compelled to do certain things. I'm like a dog with a bone. I can't let it go until it's done. I get fixated on things. When the moon is in Cancer, I become more sentimental and emotional and I take things personally. Moon is in Leo right now, and look at everybody's hair. You girls are gorgeous. I love it. Leo moon is always great for great hair. So why am I being silly? Because I believe that it's important that we approach these sacred practices in a playful manner. I take them very seriously, but if we get too serious too quickly, then we might get stuck in the perfectionism of Virgo energy, where we're thinking, I got to get it just right. But the daily rhythm that the moon offers to us really enables us to set timing to our week and to our day. And that's where the moon void, of course, comes in to be so helpful. Because if you're trying to get something done and it's the wrong moon energy, you might get frustrated and want to give up. And then you find out, oh, goodness, you know what? The moon was void, of course. Or, oh, goodness, I signed a contract with the moon in Leo. This is a Holly tidbit. Do not do that. I learned the hard way myself. And it's funny because I almost got something today. I was like, oh, the moon's going void, of course, later today. I'm going to make this purchase. And I was like, I better do it before it goes void. And then I was like, oh, no, it's a Leo moon. No, I'll wait till Saturday. But it's so funny. But when you start to track the data, and that's what I do, shameless plug, but I made a whole moon journal. But the moon journal, I just have people track the moon. You don't need a journal, but notice where's the moon? What sign is it in? What phase is it? And then ask yourself whether you roll astro dice or pull a card. What do I need to know about this energy? How does it affect me? How can I make the most of it? And again, it just makes the timing so sweet. So, Alisa, I'll pass it back to you.
I love that. That was a good intro. And you're right. When you know where the moon is, that can be a really good guide to figure out what types of activities are going to be good, or even just what's your mindset going to be like? What are you going to be feeling? Let's go a little bit deeper into the void, of course. I was super high level at the very beginning, but the main reason I really wanted to talk about this is because we have an opportunity to be really intentional with the way we go about life when we know what's going on with the moon, specifically with this void, of course.
I love this topic. I've been living and managing by the Void of Course Moon for more than 20 years. Like Irina's family, my family knows when the moon is in certain places. Void of Course is one of them. Here's the analogy I like to use. I think you did a good job describing technically what it is, right? It's no longer in a major aspect to another planet, nor will it be until it changes signs, right? My analogy for this is like a lone wolf moon. So instead of the moon getting to be part of a planetary pack where you share the spoils of your hunting and you take care of each other's offspring, when the moon is void, it's out on its own, right? And so whether you call that sleepy or disconnected, the moon it drives our intuition, and the information that it gathers from the other planets help us use that information. And so when it's out of contact, operating on its own, you don't have that. And so it is known to bring unplanned or unexpected events or outcomes. And what I would say is it's not something that people should be paranoid about. So what it's not is when the moon is void, it's not a curse. It's not fate. It doesn't mean that because the moon is void, of course, things are going to go completely wrong. And frankly, it's not realistic to avoid your life for all the hours that the moon is void. To your initial point, Elisa, right? Like,
Right.
we can't all just not go to work because the moon's void for the next 20 hours. It's just not an option. And so it's a shift in energy that is feeding us less information. And it's for a moment in time. So what's different about my lone wolf analogy is that the moon will rejoin the planetary pact, right? And when it enters that next sign, it has a different sense of energy and what's happening. So, yeah, that's the what, right? That I would add on.
Yeah, and the other thing too is it's not a huge big deal. It's not a terrible transit and it happens all the time, right? But there's ways that you can really use the energy and the ways that you can really direct that and use this to your advantage. For example, with a void of course moon, that's a great time to create. It's a great time to be in meditation, brainstorming, journaling, continuing on projects that you had started that need a little bit more work. It's not necessarily the time that you're going to start something new or set an appointment or send an email that's really important that you are going to need an answer for or that you want something to come of it. Lots of times with a void of course moon, whatever communications are set forth may or may not go anywhere because the moon is just in that lone wolf floating kind of mode. So the way I use this energy is I've started to really pay attention to it, especially since Saturn went into Aries, Neptune went into Aries, Jupiter went into Cancer. Pluto's been in Aquarius now for a little while, but in the early degrees, what's the fifth one I'm missing? There's one I'm missing. Oh, Uranus. Uranus went into Gemini. That was the last one. And up until that point, we still had less time frames because if you think about it, when a planet's at the very last degrees of a zodiac sign, then the moon can get all the way to 28, 29 in most cases before it goes void. So we might have had a void of course moon for a couple hours or a couple minutes and the best part is when it falls in the middle of the night, that's great. We're sleeping. Perfect. But when all of these planets change signs and they're all sitting in the early degrees of whichever sign they're in, then that means that the moon is going void a lot earlier in the 30 degrees of each zodiac. And we're in the middle right now of what, a 34-hour void of course moon? It went void.
Yes.
It's funny. So we're actually recording this. What is today's date? August 21st. I'll spill the beans. We don't all do this live. It's not the day before. This particular episode is being recorded on August 21st, and the moon went void today at 2:15 p.m. And I didn't even plan that. Just what a cool little synchronicity. I picked this day to record void of course moon, not even knowing it was void. I just love that. It's actually so cool. It's so appropriate. But it's going to be void all day tomorrow, like all day, because it doesn't go into Virgo. We're in a Leo moon right now. It doesn't go into Virgo until 1 a.m. or something like that on Saturday, right before the new moon in Virgo that Irina just talked about. So it's just, there's such long time periods that I've started really watching it this month when I realized how many days we had really long time periods during the work week when we're all trying to get a lot of stuff done. And so it's funny, I was telling the girls earlier this week that I had a really important email that I needed to send and I drafted it. And then I was like, oh, wait, what time is it? Because I knew this was Monday and I knew that the moon was void like all day Monday. It was like from 8 a.m. until 3 o'clock was when the moon was going to go into Cancer. And we sure did feel it in my house. That was for sure. Anyway, I waited. I set a reminder on my phone. I saved it as a draft, set the reminder, and I said, reminder, send this email at 3:15. Gave myself a good 10-minute buffer. Not that you need to do that, but I still did. And then I sent the important email that I wanted to make sure was read and addressed and will go somewhere. So that's my mindset. It's one of those things where I think it's on my Capricorn and my Aries impatience, right? I am very efficient in my life and in my work and in everything. And I get really frustrated if I'm doing a lot of work and then not having anything to show for it. It really makes me crazy. And so I really watch this because I have noticed that sometimes that happens. I'll do this and I'll do that and I'll do this and I'll do that. Or sometimes you have those days where you just feel like you can't get it together. And then you realize, oh, the moon was void. Ah, that makes sense. At least you feel better about why you felt all wonky, but it still was a frustrating day. So my goal in trying to make astrology practical is give you guys tips on how to not be frustrated and work with the energy and not against it. What about you guys? How do you use void moons?
I'm really thinking about how there's no external momentum. Like there's no conversation happening with other planets. And so the moon becomes more inward focused, I think. And really taking the time to rest and reflect is a good time to even practice detaching. So if you are an anxious person or you're worried about something, this is a good time to let that go. Taking a step back and reflecting on what's going on getting ready for that next lunar shift, but really sitting in that moment and saying, you know what? There is no energy connecting this right now, and I don't need to be connected to this either. So just disconnecting from those worries or expectations or habits that you're wanting to set aside.
That's really cool. I never thought about disconnecting from
Hmm.
anxieties or worries. A really great idea.
Mhm.
Not always easy in practice, but again, this is about starting to become intentional.
Absolutely.
I think it's a great time to work in draft. So just what you talked about with that email, right? We have to move ahead, press ahead, but I like working in draft because when you come back to finish it up, whether it's sending the final email or taking that last look before you send off a work assignment or a school assignment, you're likely going to see things through a different lens once the moon is no longer void. So you've made some progress, but you're likely going to refine that before you finish and submit it. So this notion of working in draft, doing ideation, or even putting sort of big questions out there. I used to do this in my corporate life, which is XYZ isn't working. Can we just talk about it? I don't have a prescriptive idea and I haven't heard one yet. So can we just explore what's happening and creating situations where that loose approach you can use then to be more strategic and intentional after the moon has gone back into sign.
Yeah, Holly, I love the way that you articulate that in such a down to earth, approachable, and practical application. Because, Katie, I feel like the beautiful thing about all of our different backgrounds is that we're saying similar things, but we're approaching it from a slightly different vantage point. You've got Holly and Alisa, who are still very much connected to the corporate world, and Katie, as an educator and teacher, connected to the spiritual realm, like myself as well. I love how you're talking, Katie, about the inward reflection and the detaching, because part of what I love as well about the moon void, of course, coming from spiritual aspect, is this liminal time where it's like the veil is thin. So, Holly, as you said it so beautifully, where it's okay, I don't have a prescriptive idea for this yet, but can we just sit down and talk about it and just work out some ideas and spitball? I feel like this is when we approach it from that, let's say, spiritual aspect of a liminal moment. If you've had a problem, think about it almost going into this beautiful fugue state where you are in an altered mindset, where you can access the different realms and really connect with your inner knowing that the noise of the world and other people's opinions, the moon's been having conversations and now all of a sudden she's got nobody's input. She doesn't have Saturn saying, you need to do the responsible thing now. Come on there, Miss Lady. And Leah and Mars is, no, just go, just do it. Don't think, just go. Right? Now she's all on her own. So she's in this transitional point, and that lone wolf analogy, so beautiful, Holly. And it's that moment where she needs to do the inward reflection, as you said, Katie, and start to say, wait a second, what is it that I want? I need to practice this discernment in this moment, but to put it into draft mode, because, oh, Holly, I just got chills when you said that. And Alisa, too, how you wrote that email and you're like, wait, I'm not going to send it yet, because it does look different when you're on the other side. And knowing where the moon is and what she's doing can be so helpful, because I can't tell you how I've learned the hard way. And not everybody is as moon sensitive, I call it moon sensitivity, as, let's say, necessarily me. Because
But all
when
the
you
moon and
moon
cancer people
Cancer,
out there, listen up,
Right.
right? Because
yeah,
that applies to you.
yeah, you're going to be very sensitive to what the moon's doing. But this feeling of like compulsion, just like where I'm just working on something and I know that it's not effective or efficient, but I can't let it go until it's done.
Mhm.
Now I just know going into like Scorpio moon in that case, just be aware. And the same thing with a void moon, of course. I love to use it for daydreaming with my business. What products do I want to create? How do I want to help people? Where do I want to go? Is it in alignment with my calling? Am I on the right track? And the cool thing about the energy that we're capturing right now is that it's a little bit of a right before that new moon in Virgo, which I really do feel like is a preview to upcoming eclipses, not to date this video, but you have this opportunity to say, the universe provides these moments. We're having these long void of course moons. We're getting daydreaming, drafting moments for these huge
Mhm.
shifts that are coming in 2026. Utilize them to your highest advantage. Where do you want to go? What do you want to be? What are your dreams? Use it for dreaming.
I love
And
that. It's
I
like permission to dream
mhm. And
or
I
permission to
loved
rest.
I
Yeah, go
love to
ahead.
meditate. Yeah, that's where I was going, Alisa. I love to meditate. I'm a
Mm.
transcendental meditator and a trance meditator, two very different things. Trance meditation is longer, it's deeper, etc. I love doing that when the moon is void. And I know this isn't the case with every culture, but in the United States, we do not rest and sleep and process enough. We just don't, because work is our lives and then it's our kids and commuting and all the things we're doing, right? And so there comes a time when, if you become cognizant of the void of course moon, you can give yourself permission to not be wholly productive.
And it's
absolutely.
funny because, like, someone like me, I'm Aries, Capricorn, Capricorn are my big three. And it's just go. It's all cardinal energy. I'm go. I never stop. I think it's really my Aries big time, even more so than the Capricorn. Capricorn needs to achieve, but Aries just is a constant going. And it's funny, like, I don't meditate. If anything, Irina has started to teach me that I can do a moving meditation
Mhm.
because I cannot sit still. I've tried a few times and I get so bored so quickly. I just can't stand it. And so for me, but I never stop to rest. Like sometimes I'll go and I'll book an appointment for a massage at like 12 noon or 1 p.m. just so that it will force me to actually lie down because otherwise I won't ever rest. I won't ever turn off until I burn out by the end of the day. And so it's funny, I've been really thinking, especially this week. This week we had almost 3 full days practically of
Mhm.
void of course moon energy. And I was really intentional on each of those days to just rest and just go lay down for a little bit because I know how to do that. And so I was really using the moon energy as almost like justification of my overachieving self. It's okay to not do that
Mhm.
right now. Like just go rest. So it's just another great way for like a ridiculously type A personality like me that just can't ever stop. Like it's okay to stop sometimes. So that's how I'm using it because I think it's so amazing that Holly, you can meditate the way you can. Ugh, I could not.
A lot of years of practice. It's a lot of years
Oh
of
my
practice.
gosh.
And my husband is wired more like you. If he knows the moon is void and it's the weekend and he's got a list of things he wants to do, he'll say, I'm gonna go wash the cars. Like cleaning is our other go-to, the most boring, mundane, necessary thing that sometimes is moving meditation for some people, especially if you have a lot of Virgo in your chart. Cleaning is probably meditative.
I do want to say that you don't just have to rest. I think that because there's no action, it doesn't mean, like you were talking, Irina, about maybe spiritually being connected. I think that is amazing. We were talking about drafting, being that draft phase. Really, also, that draft phase can tie up some loose ends. So if there is something
Mhm.
that's been sitting out there and being waited on, and maybe an email even that you just need to respond once to, and you're not looking for any follow up, go ahead and do that during the void of course moon. Just don't expect results. This is not a results time, but it is still okay to tie up some of those loose ends. You're not expecting a lasting influence, I definitely think that this is a good time for that.
Or if you don't want it. I shared with all of you in a separate conversation that in my corporate life, I learned to use the void of course moon for what I call productive avoidance, right? There were meetings and people and projects that, because of my role, I had a responsibility to engage in, but I didn't want to be engaged or I didn't want to have the meet or whatever. And so I would do one of two things or both, which is like all day today when the moon was void, I would go through my calendar and look at all the places I didn't want to engage. And those were the meetings I would set up. And if I could set the meeting up during the void to happen during the void, it always got canceled by the other person. So I was totally off the hook in that I did my part, I did the follow up to engage, But the circumstances were such that when the time came, it was no longer an issue or needed, or the project had folded, or the person left the company. It's learning to think about it in terms of, I call it productive avoidance. I don't think any therapist would appreciate that, but that's just our reality. For small business clients, I say, look, if there's a client that's engaging you for a bid or an estimate, and you don't want to work with them because there's something about that isn't going to go well, but you feel like professionally you don't have the option to not give a quote, right? Or to not show up and do a consultation, schedule it to happen during the void and do your part professionally, and then let it fall to the wayside, because that's likely what's going to happen.
It's almost like an analogy of somebody who is going on vacation, but they constantly check their phone to make sure they're still checking on emails and stuff like that. And if you just actually put your phone down, because that used to be me years and years ago. And in the last several years, I really unplug when I go on vacation and I don't check anything. I work ahead to make sure I'm good to go, because there's that overachiever in me again. But when I come back and I see, because here I've taken a break, right? I see that the 100 emails or whatever it is, a lot of the things, there might have been 7 or 8 emails per item that needed to be resolved, but it's all been resolved before I even get back. So it's like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like just let things go when it's supposed to go, and be there and engaged when you're ready to go. Like, love a Capricorn moon. And of course, I have a Capricorn moon. So whenever the moon comes back to you, whatever your natal moon is, you're always going to feel good, because it's like your moon came home. But that's where I'm like, okay, we've had a Sag moon. We've been having fun and playing and everything. And now it's time to get to work. Let's get everything done. So it's funny. Obviously, the point of this chat today was about the void of course moon. But when you start getting in tune with the moon and the way she is in all of the signs, it really is. I've really noticed that when there's a Leo moon, I don't want to really do much work. I want to go play. I want to go have fun, because Leo is fun. And that's why Virgo comes right after Leo, because you've had all this fun and now you got to clean up after the fun. It's funny when you really, really think about it in those ways.
There's a rhythm to it for sure. One other quick tidbit I wanted to throw in here, and I know we talk about this a lot, but in the practical application of the moon void, of course, I've done this and I love it. Like, life gets busy and you've got a lot on your plate, and certain other signs probably wouldn't be like this, but maybe it's my Jupiter and Gemini, but I'll get distracted. I'll get involved in other things, or life happens, and I might be late paying a bill. And if I feel really badly, or like late, especially if it's like you owe somebody something, I'll pay it back or pay the bill during the moon void, of course. So nothing will come of it. Meaning I won't get fined or in trouble. There's Ann Ortley who said, mail your taxes on the void moon. That way, like, nothing will come of it. So just another practical application in case you get distracted every now and then.
I know that you wanted to talk also about born under the void,
Yeah,
of
that's
course,
exactly
moon,
where
which
I was going to go.
happens.
Yeah.
Before we go there, before we transition there was one other example I wanted to give that was bigger picture practical. This is another one that
Oh,
I
yeah.
love to share.
Yeah.
So I first learned about the void of course moon years and years ago from Debbie Kimpton Smith's book, Secrets from a Stargazer's Notebook, which is a well-written, hilarious tone. And she talks about the void of course moon. And in it, she personally did some research on election cycles. And what she did was she looked at candidates who were selected between the two big parties between the years 1900 and 1972. And all of those scenarios, when a candidate was selected by the party during a void of course moon, they lost 100% of the time. Now, before I go further, because it gets even more interesting, do I think the void of course moon is making political candidates lose? No. I think it's another factor that plays into a whole lot of factors, but it's super interesting when you look at those bigger events. So for our school, I recently went back and said, I wonder what happened then between 1976 and 2025. So, because the political parties do roll call at their conventions, you know what day the nominee was announced.
Mm.
And so I went through those following 13 elections that happened. So she looked at the first 19, I looked at the next 13. During that time, any candidate who was put forward during a void course moon that ran against a candidate who wasn't put forward during a void course moon lost 70% of the time. And
Wow.
then, yeah. And then, because you have to think about it, there's two candidates, right? And then void or non-void. And then there's also scenarios where both candidates were put forward and the moon was void, or neither, the moon was void for. But the real interesting one I want to share is our current United States president, who has been the candidate 3 times for his party. And so in the first election where he was the candidate and he won, his opponent, Clinton, was put forward during the void course moon. Hillary Clinton was also born during a void course moon, which is a nice setup to where we're going to go next. So that's why I wanted to mention it.
Mm-hmm.
The second election, when he lost to Biden, he was put forward during the void course moon and Biden wasn't, and Biden won. The third time, the other scenario that exists is they were both put forward during a void course moon and he won again. So my point is in saying that just illustrates that it's not just one factor like the void, but just how interesting to see it play out in all those different ways. So yeah.
That is wild. That is
Data's
so
data.
wild. Data's data.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. And that's a cool bigger picture analogy, because we talk about just how are we going through life day to day and what's all happening. And then the grand scale analogy. And then what about in the natal chart, right? Like, what if you were born under a void of course moon? And we have talked about this a lot amongst ourselves because Holly was born under a void of course moon. And she was the first person that ever had me even think about it and look into it. And when she did, I found out my daughter was born under a void of course moon. She's got like a 29-degree moon in Sag. That's more of an obvious one. But then just a few months ago, I discovered my son also was born under a void of course moon. And that one took a little bit more figuring out, but I just had never looked at that. And it's wild. So I'm going to let Holly talk a little bit about, at least in her mind, not that there's a profile of a void of course moon baby. There's definitely not, but there's a couple similarities between Holly and my kids. It's funny.
So when I found out I was born under the void of course moon and started doing some reading on it, I, for lack of a better word, felt validated. Because the biggest thing is when the moon's void and it's on its own, it's working inwardly. And so people born in the void aren't as subject to the bigger emotions going on around them. So when they're in a setting where a lot of emotions are happening, regardless of what those are, those people aren't necessarily feeling the same thing or compelled to express those emotions the same way. The other thing is your moon drives a lot of your day to day and the information around you. And people born during the void of course moon tend to learn in a very sort of osmosis kind of way. They can learn, collect, process a lot of information, understand it, apply it, and never have necessarily taken a full course or a class or gotten a degree in a specialty. Because if they're around that topic and people talking about it and they're surrounding themselves with it, or it's in books or whatever, they really tend to absorb it. And because of that statement I made a moment ago about what's happening around them, social norms can sometimes feel unnecessary. And so I think this is the thing that we sometimes have in common. I started cursing very young. And I never understood why people would clutch their pearls. Like, frankly, as a young kid, I was just like, it's just another word. What's the difference if I say it or spell it or imply it? We all know what I'm getting at, right? What was great about that, Alisa, was you said, oh my goodness, my daughter made that same comment about a curse word. She said, no, it's just a word. And it just made me bust up laughing because it's hard for me to understand what's so offensive about it. I accept that socially that is the case. And you've never heard me really curse here. I stop myself often because I don't want to insult any viewers out there. But yeah, that's an example. Another might be the way that you dress, right? Void of course moon people are sensitive to the things around them. So, they might be averse to wearing certain kinds of clothes. I don't like wearing denim. I don't like anything crispy, for example, touching my skin. I know it sounds crazy. You'll always see me with long sleeves on because I love cold air blowing on my arms. And everybody's got the air conditioning running all the time. And so I think maybe your son we talked about has some of that too.
Yeah. Yeah, he likes soft fabrics. He doesn't really wear jeans, and I know a lot of people don't wear jeans. So, like,
Right.
obviously, like, this is not to be taken as all void of course people don't
Right.
wear jeans. That would be crazy. But it's just funny when you start noticing some similarities when there's not really that much else in common. About the cursing, this is really funny. My daughter's 9, and almost as soon as she started talking, she was picking up on language. And I say a few bad words at home every now and then. You won't see it here because I've got my Venus ruled midheaven and I like to be sweet and nice out in public. But yeah, I can say a few things. And it's funny, I will never forget there was this one day, and my son does not like saying bad words. He doesn't like it when anybody else says them. He's just very upset when people say bad words. And so my daughter, she was like 3 years old, something crazy young. And she comes over to me and she whispers to me, like to tell on Will. She's, Mommy, Will just said, what the? And I'm
Yes.
like, he did not say that. He did not say that. You said that. And you were so creative in the way that you thought it was okay to say that. He did not say that. I know he would never say that. And I just started to laugh because what do you do? What do you say to a 3-year-old who just totally played you to say a bad word and like the biggest, she dropped the F bomb,
Yeah.
and trying to tell on her brother who didn't. But oh my gosh, it's crazy. So there you go.
I I love it. I'm giggling over here because my daughter's also born under a void moon, of course. And when she was little, she used to always, like your daughter, Alisa, would find creative ways to say bad words. I'll never forget, we were at a wedding and she's, damn. And she's like a beaver dam. And she'd been the flower girl. And there was a moment, so like even beyond words, there was a moment where we were sitting at the dining room table having dinner as a family. My son is 6 years older than my daughter, and she was like around 3, 4 years old, teeny tiny, doesn't know better. And she stuck up her middle finger, lost it. He started laughing his head off. And she didn't quite exactly know what it was, but she realized the power of it. And every
That's awesome.
this little 3-year-old was flipping her to people.
Oh my
I was like,
God.
"Oh."
I think fire moons, right? In particular, I'm moon in Aries.
So
Moon, my daughter.
In the
Yeah.
void, right? I think
yeah,
in
Mhm.
particular, fire moons are just whatever, right?
yeah. Let's do it. Yeah, yeah. And I love knowing this. And here's the thing that I find that the astrology gifts all of us is it gives us the understanding and compassion for other people. Because when you have a little toddler with a fire moon, like my daughter's Aries moon, Scorpio sun, the thing is that born under the void moon, she has a big personality and it's beautiful. And I was able to know this to a certain degree, not as well as I do now, but having more astrology under my belt, the thing is that it gave me room to allow her to be herself and not try to change her to fit into society or social norms, but to give her the space to explore that and still try to be as respectful as possible, but that freedom to be her. I'll never forget, this is the last thing I'll say. We're going to visit a preschool. So here's another example. And you go take your little 3-year-old to the preschool and she's exploring it, meeting the teacher for the first time. And teacher said, oh, have a seat at the table. And so she sat down and then Lexi got up and she walked away. And the teacher said, Lexi, you forgot something. And little Lexi turns and she looks, she's like, what did I forget? And the teacher said, please push in your chair. And Lexi looked at the chair. She looked at the teacher and she said, no. The teacher nearly fell over. She couldn't believe that this little kid would be so disrespectful. And it was beautiful. I loved it. And I wanted to keep that fiery personality fostered, but she has learned how to do it. She's normal.
Oh, that's awesome. Firecrackers. Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
funny. So maybe it's the void, maybe it's not. I don't know. But talk about data. I don't know how much data there is on personality traits born under a void of course moon. I have definitely not researched it. this is just fun conversation from what we've learned
Hmm.
about the commonalities that we have and with our void of course moon people. But I wanted to definitely tackle this topic because it is one of those things. Just a funny story that I'll end with is lots of times people will say, don't do a big grocery shopping run. Because if you buy your whole entire week's worth of groceries on a void of course moon, then you'll end up eating out all week or something will happen and food will go bad or whatever. So I try to be careful of this stuff. But there was this one Thanksgiving on the food mode, right? Where I was aware that it was a void of course moon, but I really had only just started paying attention to this. So I was more in the observe mode of, is this really a thing? And so I thought, okay, just in case, right? So we were hosting, this was the day before. I was in charge of a few dishes. My husband was in charge of a few dishes. The majority, he'll watch this and he'll be like, what? You don't cook much. He does the turkey, he does all the big stuff. I have two things to make. But anyway, so I got started on my stuff in the morning and I was aware of when the void of course moon was. It was like a 2 hour period. And I decided to take a break, go do some other things. I think we had started cleaning out my son's closet and I'm like, hey, let's work on this a little bit. Meanwhile, the kitchen is empty. So my husband decides, oh, I'm going to start the mac and cheese. I'm going to start the greens. I'm going to do all this stuff. Well, of course, inevitably, what did we not have? We didn't have the cheese for the mac and cheese. So it's like stuff like that. It's just
Yeah.
sometimes it's funny. And I think if you start paying attention and you start noticing things like this, more often than not, you'll find a little flub here and a flub there, kind of like that story. It's just funny. Now I know
Yeah.
better and I make sure to tell him every time there's a void of course moon because I was like, oh my gosh, it was the void of course moon. And he's like, why didn't you tell me? I was like, I wasn't really sure how real it was yet, but we're all sure. So
Well, and when you
anyway,
combine that, yeah, with other astrological ingredients like a balsamic moon that we're in right now, which is
mhm,
sleepy, when you combine that with Mercury retrogrades, planets in your personal chart that are shifting into brand new, all those factors, right, just make, I find, the void of course moon all that more interesting.
absolutely.
We share where to find if the moon is void of course. I know
Mhm,
AstroSeek
sure.
has
Hmm.
a void of course moon calendar on their website. It is free to find, and so you can go there and find if the moon is void of course at any given day. So that's a great tool.
That's a great call out because you're right. Not everybody has the astrology software we do. There's also a really cool app that I like a lot on my iPhone, and I'm sure it's available on Androids as well, called Deluxe Moon. There's a pro version. I haven't bought it. I like whatever version I have, the free version. And it literally says right there at the bottom, when is the next void of course moon and how long is it? So even if you don't have an astro planner or anything like that, you could get that little app, and that's
Hmm.
helpful. And I actually just discovered on my Apple Watch there's a widget that goes on the watch that I can actually, I've only been doing this for a few weeks and I am just in love. It's a widget that goes with that app and it literally tells the degree of the zodiac sign that the moon is in all throughout the day. So, like right now, I'm looking at my watch and it's telling me that it's a 14-degree Leo moon. And
Hmm.
I've really enjoyed over the last few days really watching how long does it take for the moon to move a degree. We know this conceptually from all of the
Hmm.
stuff that we've talked about. It takes about 2.5 days to go 30 degrees. So that's about 12-ish degrees a day. But when I can actually watch it on my watch and see that it's an hour or two, and then how far has it gone, it's just really helping me become more in tune with the moon using my watch. So that's helped me a lot. And if you really want to go a little deeper, Irina has a really cool offering that I would like you to share before we wrap up.
Aw, thank you. So, yes, I love the moon, my moon being in Cancer, and then also the benefit that I've seen that comes from tracking the moon. So, I have created a whole club around it. I call it the Moon Club. And the goal of it is to teach you how to align with the rhythms of the moon. So, you stop beating yourself up because I know sometimes for myself, when I look at certain tasks, I'm just like, oh my God, I really just don't feel like doing the chores. I really don't feel like pulling those weeds. I don't know if I'll ever feel like it because words are powerful. And I'll never forget senior year in high school, I had an English teacher and he was so frustrated with us kids because we all had senioritis big time. It was the end of the school year. We're like, oh, we are so done. We're already accepted into college. We don't want to work. We don't want to be here. And he said to us, if you don't do this now, you'll never do it and you'll never accomplish anything. He's just so angry. And I took it to heart. So if there are tasks where I'm like, I can't do it right now, I'll never be able, my yard is going to be overgrown with ivy. I'll never get through this stack of papers. You get frustrated with yourself. But if I, from this vantage point now, I know, oh, the moon's in Leo. I want to play. I don't want to work. Oh, in a day or
Mhm.
two, that'll change. And I'll have the motivation that I can tap into and harness. We can always choose not to. We have free will. We're not at the fate and the whims of the planets and the stars above. But I love presenting this energy of the moon as a way to harness, like you're catching a wave. Holly, you used that example the last time we chatted. Think of the energy coming in like a wave. You can choose to ride that wave or not, but how much more enjoyable life is when you catch that wave and you know how to ride it. So in the Moon Club, we work with the cycles and the phases of the moon, tracking it, how it affects you, with gatherings to do sacred ceremony and ritual. Because the other thing about the moon, it serves not only as a timing factor of like when to take certain actions, but it also is a great way to tap into your intuition. And for me, part of my calling in this life is to help make the invisible world visible, to teach people who are big feelers, who are curious empathic seekers, how to step into the life they were born to live by activating their natural innate talents and gifts. A lot of these are they're clairs, basically. They're clear knowing, they're clear seeing, feeling, sensing, and the moon can really help you do that. So Moon Club is centered around harnessing that kind of energy. If you're interested in checking it out, irenamiller.co/club. You can find all the details there. Thanks, Alisa.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Any other closing thoughts about Avoid a Course Moon? I think we've covered it. So we've covered it and more. I even said a really big bad word, which you won't see again. Not that one. Not on camera anyway. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching, for listening, for liking, for subscribing. Definitely, if you have any Void a Course Moon stories, drop them in the comments. We would love to hear from you. So until next time, have a great week. We will see you next week. If you'd like to reach out and connect with any of us, we'd love to hear from you. We're all available for readings, and just the connection would be great. So any comments, anything you've got for us, we'd love to hear it. So thanks again and take care. We'll see you next time. Bye.